The Vault of Forgotten Truths. This is impossible, Elira whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and dread. It wasn't here yesterday. Her cybernetic implants buzzed faintly as she examined the ancient book. Every word seemed alive, shifting and rearranging itself before her eyes. It was as if the text carried the weight of centuries, each sentence a shard of history torn from the fabric of time. Then it happened. A sharp, searing pain shot through her neural interface. A single line of text burned itself into her mind, echoing like a haunting refrain. "They're rewriting us out of existence." Elira, report. Archivist Kale's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and strained. "We've detected anomalies across multiple sectors. Texts are changing. Worlds are disappearing." "I know," she replied, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around her. "I think I found the source." She opened the Codex again. Its pages glowed faintly, and words began to peel away from the paper, floating upward like whispers caught in the wind. Each fragment pulsed with energy, emitting a soft chime that harmonized with the hum emanating from the planet's core. "The texts aren't just being rewritten," she said, realization dawning in her voice. "They're fighting back." The fracture below. Before she could fully grasp what that meant, the floor beneath her feet cracked. Dust and debris rained down as a massive fissure tore through the archive, revealing a cavernous expanse below. Suspended in the void was a colossal sphere of light and shadow, the source of the resonance. Around it stood figures clad in Dominion armor, their weapons trained on the artifact. "Elira." Kale's voice was frantic now, almost panicked. "Get out of there. That's not Dominion tech. It's something older. Something worse." But Elira didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the sphere, which now pulsed in time with the Codex in her hands. She felt a strange pull, as though the artifact was calling to her. In that moment, she understood this wasn't just about preserving history. It was about reclaiming it, about ensuring that humanity's story would never be forgotten or rewritten. "If they want to erase us," she said, her voice echoing with quiet defiance, "they'll have to rewrite every last word." With that, she jumped, the sphere of resonance. As she plummeted toward the sphere, her cybernetic limbs adjusted midair, stabilizing her descent. The artifact revealed its true nature. Not a solid object, but a swirling mass of energy, a convergence of fractured realities. Fragments of text floated within it, glowing faintly with the remnants of lost histories. The Dominion soldiers shouted warnings, their voices distorted by the growing hum. They fired their weapons, but the beams dissipated harmlessly against the sphere's surface. Elira landed on the edge of the artifact, her boots sinking slightly into its shifting surface. She opened the Codex once more, its pages radiating an intense light. The words within began to peel away, merging with the sphere in a cascade of golden sparks. "What are you doing?" Kale's voice was frantic now, tinged with fear. "Elira, you're destabilizing the entire system." "It's the only way," she replied, her voice calm but resolute. "If we don't fight back, there won't be anything left to save." As the Codex emptied itself into the sphere, the text fragments inside began to coalesce, forming coherent sentences. Phrases appeared in languages long dead, yet their meaning was clear. "Remember us. Do not let them silence our song. We were here." The sphere pulsed violently, sending shock waves through the chamber. The Dominion soldiers retreated, their armor cracking under the strain. Even Kale's voice disappeared as the comms unit failed. Elira stood her ground, her cybernetic hands now fused with the sphere's surface. She felt the weight of countless memories pressing against her consciousness, threatening to overwhelm her. Yet she held on, channeling the power of the Codex into the artifact. The memory reborn. The sphere erupted in a blinding flash of light. When the brightness faded, the artifact was gone, replaced by a swirling vortex of energy. From it emerged ghostly figures, humanoid shapes clad in flowing robes, their faces obscured by masks of shimmering glass. The silent choir, Elira whispered, recognizing them from the visions she had seen earlier. The figures raised their arms in unison, their movements fluid and unnatural. A haunting melody filled the air, resonating with the same chords Elira had heard in the Codex. It spoke of loss and longing, of betrayal and redemption, of scars that refused to heal, of a people who had been erased but would not be forgotten. One of the figures stepped forward, placing a hand on Elira's shoulder. Though their face was hidden, she felt their presence, a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "You have awakened the first note," the figure said, their voice low and resonant, as though spoken by many mouths at once. "But the song is far from finished." Before Elira could respond, the vortex collapsed, leaving her alone in the cavern. Above her, the fissure began to seal itself, the walls knitting back together as though the chamber had never been breached. The aftermath. When Elira returned to the surface, she found Kale waiting for her, his face pale with worry. "What happened down there?" he demanded, his voice tinged with both fear and urgency. "I don't know if I saved us or doomed us," she admitted, her voice heavy with uncertainty. "But one thing is certain, they won't forget us again." Kale frowned, glancing at the horizon. The sky was streaked with crimson and gold, as though the very fabric of reality had been altered. "We need to prepare," he said grimly. "Whatever you unleashed, it's only the beginning." Elira nodded, clutching the empty codex tightly. For the first time in centuries, the voices of the forgotten had been heard, and they would not be silenced again. The awakening of the choir. Elira stood at the edge of the cavern, her cybernetic hands still fused with the remnants of the sphere. The ghostly figures, the silent choir, hovered around her, their movements fluid and unnatural, though their faces were hidden behind shimmering masks. She could feel their presence pressing against her consciousness like a weight too vast to comprehend. "You have awakened the first note," one of the figures repeated, their voice resonating as though spoken by countless voices in unison. "But the song is far from finished." "What do you mean?" Elira asked, her voice steady despite the overwhelming sensation of being surrounded by something ancient and unknowable. "What happens now?" The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying her. "The texts you sought to preserve are not merely records of the past. They are fragments of the great chorus, a harmony that once sang the universe into existence. When the Dominion erased humanity, they silenced your voice in the chorus. Now, you have begun to sing again." Elira frowned, trying to process the implications. "If we're part of this chorus, why were we erased? Why silence us?" "Because your song was dangerous," another figure interjected, stepping forward. Its mask reflected faint traces of crimson and gold, mirroring the fractured sky above. "Your voice carried the power to reshape reality, to rewrite what others sought to control." Kale's voice echoed in her mind, distant but insistent. "Whatever you unleashed, it's only the beginning." Before Elira could respond, the figures raised their arms in unison. A haunting melody filled the air, resonating with the same chords she had heard in the Codex. It spoke of loss and longing, of betrayal and redemption, of scars that refused to heal, of a people who had been erased but would not be forgotten. "The chorus remembers," the first figure said, "and now, so must you." With that, the choir dissolved into wisps of light, leaving Elira alone in the cavern. The fissure above her began to seal itself, the walls knitting back together as though the chamber had never been breached. The return to the surface. When Elira emerged from the cavern, Kale was waiting for her. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. "What happened down there?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "The entire system went haywire." I lost contact with half the archive teams. Elira held up the empty codex, its pages now blank. I don't know if I saved us or doomed us, she admitted. But one thing is certain, they won't forget us again. Kale frowned, glancing at the horizon. The sky was streaked with crimson and gold, as though the very fabric of reality had been altered. We need to prepare, he said grimly. Whatever you unleashed, it's only the beginning. Elira nodded, clutching the codex tightly. For the first time in centuries, the voices of the forgotten had been heard, and they would not be silenced again. The fractured horizon. As Elira and Kale made their way back to the surface, the world around them seemed different. The air was heavier, charged with an energy that hummed faintly against their skin. The stars above flickered unnaturally, their light bending and warping as if caught in some unseen current. This isn't right, Kale muttered, his gaze fixed on the sky. The resonance, it's spreading. Elira didn't respond. She could feel it too, a low-frequency vibration that resonated deep within her chest. It wasn't just the planet that had changed. It was the fabric of reality itself. The texts are rewriting themselves, she said finally, her voice quiet but resolute. Every word, every sentence, it's all coming back. The Dominion tried to erase us, but the chorus remembers. Kale turned to her, his expression grim. And what about the Dominion? What happens when they realize what you've done? They'll come for us, Elira replied. But this time we'll be ready. The echoes of Terra. Back at the archive, the team worked frantically to contain the fallout from Elira's actions. Texts across the facility were shifting and rearranging themselves, forming new patterns and meanings. Some books glowed faintly with an inner light, while others crumbled into dust as their contents were rewritten. It's happening everywhere. One of the archivists reported, her voice tinged with panic. Worlds are reappearing in the archives. Histories are changing. We can't keep up. Elira moved through the chaos, her cybernetic hands brushing against the shelves. Each touch sent a pulse of energy through the texts, stabilizing them momentarily before they shifted again. The Codex is gone, she said, addressing the team, but its power remains. We've awakened something ancient, something that was never meant to be silenced. And now, Kale asked, his tone heavy with unease. Now, Elira replied, her voice firm, we fight, not just to preserve our history, but to reclaim our place in the great chorus. The Dominion erased us once. They won't do it again. The resonance spreads. The resonance emanating from the planet's core had grown stronger, its low-frequency hum now a constant presence in the air. Elira stood at the edge of the archive's central chamber, her cybernetic hands trembling as she clutched the empty codex. Its pages were blank, but faint traces of light still pulsed within it, as though the artifact was alive and waiting for something or someone to awaken it fully. Around her, the archive was in chaos. Texts shifted and rearranged themselves, forming new patterns and meanings. Some books glowed faintly with an inner light, while others crumbled into dust as their contents were rewritten. The very fabric of reality seemed to be unraveling, and with it, the Dominion's control over history. The texts are fighting back, Kale said, his voice heavy with awe and fear. They're reclaiming what was stolen. Elira nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The sky was alive with shifting colors, crimson, gold, and violet, pulsing in time with the resonance. It was as if the universe itself was remembering. But at what cost? She whispered, more to herself than to Kale. Every word that rewrites itself erases something else. We're not just reclaiming history, we're rewriting it. Kale frowned, stepping closer to her. And what happens when the Dominion realizes what we've done? They won't let this stand. They already know, Elira replied, her voice firm despite the weight of the situation. That's why they'll come for us. But this time we'll be ready. The Dominion's response. Before they could prepare further, The ground beneath them trembled. A deep, resonant boom echoed through the chamber, followed by the unmistakable sound of Dominion warships descending from orbit. "They're here," Kale muttered, his expression grim. Alira didn't respond. She opened the Codex once more, its blank pages glowing faintly with threads of light. Words began to form, written not in ink but in fragments of energy. "Remember us. Do not let them silence our song. We were here." The message was clear. The texts were not just records of the past. They were voices of those who had been erased, and they were calling out to her. "We need to move," Kale urged, glancing toward the entrance. "If the Dominion breaches the archive, we're finished." Alira hesitated, then closed the Codex. "Not yet," she said, her voice resolute. "There's one last thing I need to do. The final note." Alira led Kale deeper into the archive, to a hidden chamber buried beneath layers of ancient data cores. The room was small and unassuming, its walls lined with shelves of crumbling scrolls and forgotten manuscripts. At its center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single object, a crystalline sphere containing a swirling vortex of light and shadow. "The memory core," Alira explained, recognizing it from the visions she had seen earlier. "It's the heart of the archive and the source of the resonance." Kale frowned, studying the sphere. "What does it do?" "It remembers," Alira replied simply. "Everything. Every word, every song, every story. It's the link between the Codex and the Great Chorus." As she approached the pedestal, the sphere began to pulse in time with the Codex in her hands. Fragments of text floated around her, forming a spiral of light that connected the two artifacts. "This is how we fight back," she said, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "By giving the chorus a voice." Kale stepped forward, his expression uneasy. "And what happens to us?" "We become part of the song," Alira replied, "like everyone else who's been erased." Before Kale could respond, the chamber doors burst open, revealing a squad of Dominion soldiers clad in sleek, black armor. Their weapons were trained on Alira and Kale, their faces obscured behind reflective visors. "Step away from the artifact," one of them commanded, their voice amplified through distorted speakers. "You are harboring a class, one mimetic hazard. Surrender immediately or be redacted." Alira didn't move. She raised the Codex high, its pages glowing brighter with each passing second. "If you want to erase us," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "you'll have to rewrite every last word." With that, she placed the Codex on the pedestal, aligning it with a memory core. The awakening. The moment the Codex touched the sphere, the entire chamber erupted in a blinding flash of light. The text floating around Alira coalesced into a single, unified melody, a haunting refrain that resonated with the same chord she had heard in the silent choir. The Dominion soldiers fired their weapons, but the beams dissipated harmlessly against the sphere surface. The resonance grew louder, filling the air with a symphony of voices that spoke of loss and longing, of betrayal and redemption, of scars that refused to heal, of a people who had been erased but would not be forgotten. "You have awakened the final note," a voice echoed through the chamber, resonant and otherworldly. It was the silent choir, their ghostly figures emerging from the light. One of them stepped forward, placing a hand on Alira's shoulder. Though their face was hidden, she felt their presence, a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "The chorus remembers," the figure said, "and now, so must you." With that, the sphere collapsed into a single point of light, which then expanded outward in a shockwave that engulfed the entire archive. The aftermath. When the light faded, Alira found herself standing alone in the central chamber. The Dominion soldiers were gone, their weapons reduced to slag. Around her, the texts were stable once more, their words glowing faintly with an inner light. Kale appeared beside her, his face pale but resolute. "What happened?" he asked, his voice tinged with awe. "We gave the chorus a voice," Elira replied, clutching the empty Codex tightly. Now, the Dominion can't silence us anymore. Kale frowned, glancing at the horizon. The sky was streaked with crimson and gold, as though the very fabric of reality had been altered. But this isn't over, he said grimly. Whatever you unleashed, it's only the beginning. Elira nodded, her resolve hardening. For the first time in centuries, the voices of the forgotten had been heard, and they would not be silenced again. The silence was only the beginning. Subscribe now for the next chapter in Chronicles of the Lost, where the scars of history become the weapons of tomorrow. Watch the full playlist to uncover all hidden connections. The chorus isn't finished. The flag still flies.